That's it. The little tiny wheel has stopped spinning, therefore, I must be live. Here, in the real, in the raw, in the moment, on the internet. 7 o'clock, top of the hour, utilizing that internet power. In too good of a mood to be dour. It is I, Malcolm Tent, coming at you from the Bon Air Chicken Farm in Danbury, Connecticut, for this week's episode of Malcolm Tent Talks Tunes. Hello, Professor Gelman, out there in Tucson, Arizona, where the sunsets are beautiful and the sun is hot. Hope you got my t-shirts, Ms. Gelman. Just saying. I know school's beginning soon, and you need a project to keep yourself busy until us brats get back into session, whether it's in the classroom or virtually. I don't know how everybody's doing it out there, but yes, things are happening. Things are happening everywhere, whether we like it or not. Yes, the weekly installment of Malcolm Tent Talks Tunes is here, soon to be archived on my YouTube channel, and will of course be archived forever on my Facebook page. So look it up, live it, love it, learn from it, teach me something, subscribe to it, be a part of it, get the soup stirring. Yes, we're going to make it happen. So yeah, what's going to happen this week? I'm going to talk about really bad celebrity records of the 60s and 70s. The celebrity record is a genre which is probably still alive and well, but I don't really know, because I don't have cable TV, I don't have a satellite, I don't read the newspapers, I don't go on online news. I am completely, utterly disconnected from what's happening in the so-called real world. I have no idea. All I know is that the phenomenon of the celebrity record from the 60s and 70s was something that pretty much really only could have happened in the 60s and 70s. Because that time was a magical yet cynical nexus, a gathering, a crossing of eras. You had showbiz that was still being run by and large by old vaudevillians and silent movie moguls and smoke-filled backroom Las Vegas types. But there was a whole new breed of entertainers coming in that were informed by rock and roll and how to promote a rock and roll show and being in touch with young people. So you had this really weird mix in mainstream show business of the very stodgy old school and the up-and-coming new school. And the collision of thoughts that resulted from that, which resulted in some really, really interesting product. And I do mean product. Hello, Pear from Sweden. Hello, Mr. Sean Fairweather down there in D.C., and all the other people who I see who are watching right now live on the dreaded Facebook. Stefan from New Zealand, early morning viewing. Hello. If you're watching this on YouTube archived, just ignore everything I'm saying. Except for the fact that we're talking about this really weird time in the entertainment business. When you've got things that are run mostly by these holdovers, literally from the days of vaudeville. You know, when the concept of the variety show and the well-rounded, all-around entertainer was king. That's how people looked at entertainers. You weren't just a singer or a dancer or a comedian or a songwriter. You were expected to do a little bit of everything. You were expected to sing and dance and, you know, little song, little dance, little seltzer down the pants. You're supposed to do everything. And that was, of course, tied into the fact that if you were an entertainer, you were a cash cow. They were going to milk you for every drop you had in every arena they possibly could. And I know that's still true. I know that hasn't changed one bit. It's just that the way they do it now is a little more sophisticated than the way that they used to do it in the 60s and 70s. In the 60s and 70s, it was particularly ham-fisted and really artless. And that's sort of a key phrase, artless. There was very little art to the entertainment biz at that time. And so art collided with commerce. The lack of art collided with commerce. Old school vaudevillians were trying to figure their way around this whole new youth culture and this rock and roll shit. They hated rock and roll by and large, but as this old saying goes, it's like fish. It smells bad, but it sells. And so they're going to make all-around entertainers out of everybody they possibly can. And one classic example of where they try to do that with a rock and roller, to turn a rock and roller into an all-around entertainer, was, of course, maybe the most egregious example of all, maybe the saddest example of all. I, of course, refer to the boy from Tupelo, Mississippi, the Tupelo Flash, Elvis Presley. Maybe I can line this up perfectly. Look, I'm Elvis. Pretty close, huh? Elvis Presley. At the mention of the thought Elvis Presley being turned into a film star, old Burt Reynolds, who was proudly hanging on my door, tried to commit suicide. I fished him out of the river and hung him back up. He might jump again. We'll see. Don't do it, Burt. I've still got almost an hour to go. So stick around. Life is worth living. You know the signs you see on the bridges to keep people from jumping off them? Take it to heart, Burt. Life is worth living. Stay right there, Burt. No matter how depressing the idea of Elvis Presley being turned into a star of an endless parade of really mediocre and terrible movies, such as Girl Happy, featuring one of my favorite Elvis songs, Do the Clam. Yes, Do the Clam is on this, as is Girl Happy. You want to talk about artless? I just used the term a second ago, artless. Check out how artless this is. I hope you guys can see this incredibly artless piece of cover art. Look at the way that they cut Elvis out and stuck the two-dimensional picture on a sailboat. Look at how out of proportion that is. How the colors don't match, the lighting doesn't match. It's just wrong, baby. It's wrong. So artless. And that's what happened when you try to turn the greatest rock and roll singer ever into a movie star. You create an entire genre, the Elvis movie, with the accompanying soundtracks to go with it. Pretty bad. But you know, one of my favorite bromides is that bad does not equate to worthless. In fact, a lot of times bad is better than good. Sometimes bad is so bad that enterprising entrepreneurs take matters into their own hands and release an album like this. Elvis's greatest shit. Look at that. 22, count 'em, dumb songs on one long-playing record album. The very best of the very worst. Including 9 rare, previously unreleased recordings. Big fucking deal. Almost all from Elvis's soundtrack movies. Or I should say movie soundtracks. The soundtracks to his movies, you know what I mean. Elvis soundtrack music, the worst, compiled onto one LP. That's what it comes down to sometimes when you try to make somebody an all-around entertainer and milk every single penny you possibly can out of them before they fade into obscurity and dry up and blow away. And you move on to the next one and turn them into a dried up husk, a former shell of their being. So yes, movie star made out of a rocker, and the results were not pretty. Usually it was the opposite way around. Usually they would take the star of stage, screen, and television and try to make a rocker out of them. That, my friends, is the real meat of the matter. That's the real bread on the butter right there as far as I'm concerned. Elvis's greatest shit certainly is something. There's only so much of it. When you talk about trying to turn movie stars and TV stars and old, ancient, creaky vaudevillians into rockers, That's when it gets really interesting, and that's when we have a lot of territory to dig into. Oh boy, this is good. So why don't we begin at just about the very beginning of time, for all intents and purposes. Scroll down here for a second. Hello, Larry. Hello, John Bowman. Hello, Andy Miller. Hey, Raghunath Kappa. What's up? Raghunath Das. And Sean, and of course, Stefan. Yes. Hi, guys. It's good to see you all out there. We'll start at practically the very beginning. Practically the very beginning of the beginning. I use the term creaky old vaudevillian turned into a rocker. What better example than this one right here, kids? George Burns. Yes, George Burns sings. There he is, right there. At the age of about 112, with his love beads and his Nehru jacket and his peace sign. Yes, they tried to turn George Burns into a rocker. Why not? Make an all-around entertainer of him. Take the old stodgy vaudevillian practices and have them collide with modern-day rock and roll, and have George Burns do songs like With a Little Help from My Friends, 59th Street Bridge song, Feeling Groovy. How about I Can't Get No Satisfaction? Yes, this guy right here with his hairpiece. I think that's probably his real face. But this dude was about 112 years old when this album was recorded. And you haven't heard anything until you've heard him do I Can't Get No Satisfaction with a big band backing. It's intense. The intensity level is ratcheted up straight up to 11 when you hear George Burns sing. What's interesting, and this is what fascinates me endlessly about these things, what's really interesting is that you would expect an old, and I do mean old, vaudevillian doing Beatles and Stones and Simon and Garfunkel songs to not sell that much, you know, because you're trying to make everybody happy. The music itself is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So you think, well, who would buy it? You know, do his old vaudeville fans really want to hear him do a Rolling Stones song? Do young rock and rollers really want to hear an old vaudevillian doing a Rolling Stones song? Apparently, yes, because this record went through at least 2 different pressings. They actually reissued this sumbitch. Only now, the second pressing's got a much more hip title. It's A Musical Trip. It says so right there. Musical trip. Get it? It's a trip. It's a musical trip with George Burns. And now they got rid of all the other tired old vaudevillians, and it's just George with his Nehru jacket and his love beads and his cigar. But for some reason, they got rid of the peace sign. He's shooting the peace sign there, but they got rid of the peace sign on that one. I'm going to guess that his older clientele weren't having none of that peace and love shit, that commie subversive pinko shit from George Burns. No way. So they got rid of that. They also got rid of it on the back. There is no peace with George Burns. None whatsoever. But it is definitely a trip, and you definitely got 2 different pressings of it. Same songs, same content, both equally bad. Really bad. I love these albums. I've played these albums just about to death. That's why I've got one sealed. This is a sealed copy, and one that is open on a fabulous Buddha label. That's the one I listen to. That's the one for the archive. God bless you, George Burns. He finally died at the age of 276, I think. He was old when he finally kicked the bucket. Old, I tell ya. But that kind of music, it was born old, but it never gets old. To George Burns, on whatever vaudevillian stage in the afterlife you're trotting the boards on right now, I drink a toast to you. All right. We have another amazing, incredible, grotesque, fossilized vaudevillian having a head-on relentless collision with the world of rock and roll and the youth it represents. Yeah. No, I'm not talking about The almighty anti-scene. I'm not talking about anti-scene because we're the young men with the young idea. No, I'm talking about this one right here. I'm talking about the absolutely, believe me, incomparable Mae West. Yes, Mae West. Now that doesn't look too threatening. Doesn't look too dangerous. Doesn't look too hideous. It's just kind of like a stock cover graphic done by the MGM in-house art department of somebody named Mae West. No big deal. But you get to the back cover. Ooh, boy. Yeah, there she is, all right, in all of her ragged glory. Keeping in mind that she, like George Burns, see, I don't know the exact numbers, but she was absolutely at least in her 70s at this point. Minimum in her 70s. Probably pushing her 80s. And this was back in the day before every star over the age of 35 had plastic surgery and had their skin sanded down and their cheekbones replaced with wishbones and their lips liposuctioned and their eyelids stitched on in double layers and their eyebrows tattooed up to their scalps. This was, I mean, as disturbing as it is to see something like this now, it was way disturbing to see this in the late 60s and early 70s. I mean, god damn. Yeah, somebody is mentioning right now, Billy Death mentions that the movie Sextet, starring Mae West and Alice Cooper. And Sextet is one frightening movie because Mae West stars in it. And you can see her literally just kind of creaking all over the music, all over the movie set. Like literally just petrified, shuffling around the set, while everybody else kind of swirls around her pretending that nothing is wrong. That's showbiz, kids, and that proves to you that there is something wrong with showbiz when they do that. Oh my god. Yeah, pushing 80, Dennis says. Look at that, she's pushing 80. That's her second album, Way Out West. I hope the glare doesn't interfere. But look at all those young studs being turned on by Mae West. And her unbridled invitation to come up and rock with me. God damn, that's frightening. Woo! And of course, what makes these records so great is that there's no irony. There is no irony. There's no tongue-in-cheek. Everybody involved in this was deadly serious. They were pushing product. Somebody really honestly thought that this ghastly, corseted apparition of the old vaudevillian Mae West could sell music to a rock and roll audience. They could have her doing songs like Day Tripper, Treat 'Em Right, the great Bob Dylan song, If You Gotta Go, Go Now, Boom Boom, Out Go the Lights, Twist and Shout. Sounds like she's got an aneurysm when she does Twist and Shout. Look it up. You got to hear this to believe it. You probably still won't believe it once you've heard it. Goddamn, Great Balls of Fire. Whole lot of shaking going on. How much shaking could there possibly be when you're that tightly bound up, I ask you? There ain't much shaking going on there. I mean, sure, she's trying. Light My Fire? Wow. Rock Around the Clock. Amazing. Amazing. Produced by Ian Whitcomb. I would like for the internet research team to look up Ian Whitcomb. I think Ian Whitcomb produced some regular rock and roll records. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Mike Curb congregation. And Mike Curb is a name that you're going to see an awful lot in 60s and 70s schmaltz music, especially on the MGM and related labels. That's a whole other story. I talked about Mike Curb in pretty good detail on one of my earlier webcasts, which you can look up on Facebook and probably YouTube once I get around to uploading that one. A little bit tongue-tied today. I don't know why. You have to bear with me, please. But anyway, yes, a classic example of old-school show business colliding in a bloody, broken glass, shard wreck of mismatched culture. Mae West. I've said it before, I'll say it again. These records are really bad, but sometimes bad is better than good. I love these albums. Keepers. These are all from my personal collection, by the way. Mine. They belong to me, Malcolm Tent, from Danbury, Connecticut. You can't have them. Old school, did I mention? I take a lot of satisfaction out of this one. Mae West couldn't get no satisfaction. George Burns couldn't get no satisfaction. But I get a lot of satisfaction out of this extremely weird collision of extremely old and completely up to the minute. This is so bizarre. I don't know if this guy actually qualifies as a celebrity per se, because that is kind of the focus of what I'm doing today, but this album really fits in with the theme. This is where old school has a bloody mess running into the new school. This is Mitch Miller and the Gang and the Peace Sing-Along. Yes, Mitch Miller and the Gang, Peace Sing-Along. You know, like George Burns wasn't allowed to do on his album when they reissued it? Never mind that. This is all peace. This is all love. Let's take a look at the Gang, shall we? There they are. Look at this. There's Mitch Miller and the Gang. All 825 of them. Having a peace sing-along. With Mitch Miller proudly poised in the middle. Ready to deliver the good word of peace. And there he is. Probably with his emotions more accurately expressed about the whole thing. On the other side of the cover. Yes, Mitch Miller. Now, in case y'all didn't know, a little bit of background on Mitch Miller. Mitch Miller was the head of Columbia Records in the 1950s when rock and roll first hit. And Mitch Miller hated rock and roll. Mitch Miller was anti-rock and roll. Mitch Miller was pro-Patti Page. Mitch Miller was daffy for Doris Day. Mitch Miller was freaky for Frankie Lane. Mitch Miller hated rock and roll. Probably vowed to stamp it out at one time or another. And as the president of Columbia Records, he made damn sure that rock and roll didn't gain any traction on his label, on his dime. He was very diligent about that. So, as, I forget who it was that said you can't stop rock and roll. Who was it that said you can't stop rock and roll? I forget. But the fact remains, you can't stop rock and roll. So Mitch Miller had to shuffle on off in the sunset and go grow cobwebs somewhere for a bunch of years. Until approximately 1970, when from completely out of nowhere, because as far as I know, he hadn't made an album in 15 or so years. I got to mention too that Mitch Miller and the Gang was his band, and he had a hugely successful run of albums with Sing Along with Mitch and the Gang, which is probably why he hated rock and roll so much, because he didn't want anybody ruining his good thing. He was selling a lot of records with Mitch Miller and the Gang. Sing Along with How Much Is That Doggy in the Window? That's not rock and roll. Therefore, it's not for Mitch Miller. And yes, John Bowman points out that it's Twisted Sister who said you can't stop rock and roll. Twisted Sister said it. Anti-Scene live it. I'm saying it too. So rock and roll was not stopped. Mitch Miller went off and crawled away somewhere to count his money. And then for some strange reason, for some bizarre, unknown, unknowable reason, in 1970, Mitch Miller and the Gang came back and made an album. And it was not on Columbia. It was on all labels Atlantic. Which is odd, because I'm not aware of any connection ever between Mitch Miller and Atlantic. Atlantic Records, dude. Led Zeppelin, Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett. You know? Mitch Miller? The guy who hated rock and roll? I don't know. Corporate machinations being what they are, these things do happen. So Mitch Miller and his gang, these guys, crawl out from under their big old rock, or all the pebbles under the aquarium where they were all living, their respective rocks, and release an album with What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. All right, that could fit into Mitch Miller's worldview, perhaps. How about, This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land, by that commie Pete Seeger. But hey, it's 1970. The blacklist had been lifted. Pete Seeger was not banned anymore, so all right, we'll put his song on the album, that's fine. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. That's when it starts to get weird. Is when you hear these guys, led by that guy, singing Blowing in the Wind. That's kind of weird. How about when they do Give Peace a Chance? That's weird. That's about as weird as it gets. Mitch Miller and the gang and the Peace sing-along doing Give Peace a Chance. They even include the lyrics, so you can sing along. So you and all of your friends and neighbors, who no doubt look like this, can gather around the gramophone in the living room, or maybe the hi-fi if you're super modern, and you too can sing Give Peace a Chance and pretend that old Mitch Miller's there directing you in song. The power and the glory of song. I guess maybe if you can't beat him, join him. He couldn't beat rock and roll, so he went to join rock and roll. Luckily, this album completely tanked when it was released. To this day, you still see it in dollar bins everywhere. My copy, as you can see, like every copy I've ever seen is a cutout, which means all the overstock was literally cut and thrown out into the 49-cent bins, where to this very day, many, many, many of them languish. It's bad, but I love it. I love this bad music. I love this celebrity gross-out stuff. Love it. Hello, who's watching live on Facebook right now? James Burns, Damon, WNHU DJ Damon. Dennis, you need that Mitch Miller album. I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't tell you I've got a few for sale. If you really need it, contact me. I got them. Believe me, I got them. Let's see. Yep. And everybody's still tuned in. Cool. Let's get into some more celebrity gross out, shall we? This is a guy. This is a star. I remember this guy when I was a kid. I cannot remember the name of the show he was the star of. I want to say it was called The Doctors. Carrie Jo Bliss, do you know? Can anybody from the internet research team look up what TV show Chad Everett, who as you can see is all strung out, what TV show was this the guy the star of? Look at that, man, look at that. That's almost perfect. Somebody take a screenshot of this immediately and send it to me. Please. I'm asking you politely. See if I can get it totally. That's it. Somebody send me a screenshot of this. I really need this. Chad Everett was the star of, I think, The Doctors. Didn't last very long. It was big in its time. But it just totally exemplifies the cash in as quickly as you possibly can. Smash and grab. The guy's a star now. Get an album out. Quick. Can he sing? Doesn't matter. Get an album out. Quick. Make sure that you've got some of the modern, current day language that all the hippies like, such as all strung out. Look at this guy. He looks all strung out, doesn't he? Isn't that what strung out, drug fiend young people look like? Like that? You put them in a forest somewhere and they're all strung out. How'd you like to see that dude coming at you in the woods? I wouldn't. Looks like he's ready to spring. So yeah. The question I asked earlier is, can he sing? No, he can't. He can't. Dude can't sing. No doubt a fine actor. No doubt all strung out. And photogenic, you know. The dude can't sing. He just can't. It's really, really difficult to listen to this album. Because the dude just can't sing. Oh man, he just can't sing. So what does he try to do? You're My Soul and Inspiration by the Righteous Brothers? That's the first song on side one, man. They chuck it right into the deep end. You take a guy who can't sing, and he's all strung out, and they try to have him do a Righteous Brothers song. That's cruel and unusual, man. That's not very nice to do to a guy who, I'll say it again, is all strung out. Maybe that's why he looks like that in the back. That's kind of morose. Can't blame him. Ain't No Sunshine by Bill Withers. The title track, All Strung Out, which is really something. Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. Also on MGM Records. Arranged and produced by Nino Tempo, another name you see on lots of 60s and 70s easy listening records. Apparently, Chad Everett did do another record sometime in the 70s. I heard a disco record of his. He does Nights on Broadway by the Bee Gees. Still pretty bad. He still never... still didn't take all the millions from his TV show, which was not Emergency. I think it was The Doctors. Pretty sure it was The Doctors. I used to watch Emergency regularly when I was a kid on Saturday nights. 8 o'clock on Channel 7 in South Florida. Emergency was the bomb. But it wasn't Chad Everett. Pretty sure it was The Doctors. Anyway, he must have had a couple of royalty checks from The Doctors. Didn't pay for a vocal coach. It's really sad because his disco version of Nights on Broadway is at least as bad as the 60s pop music on All Strung Out. But once again, I love this record. I will listen to this record and have listened to this record far more than I will ever listen to anything on commercial radio right now. Okay? If the Chad Everett, excuse me, I don't know why I'm so phlegmy tonight. If Chad Everett had been forced to make an album these days, they would have auto-tuned him to death. They would have auto-tuned all the personality and all the charm right out of him. And this record would, instead of being really bad and wonderful, would simply be a worthless lump of garbage that I wouldn't be talking about now, the better part of 50 years later. See, bad is not worthless. If I ever meet Chad Everett, I will shake his hand and ask him to autograph this, because I love this album. And Shannon wants to know if the song was called Medical Center. James Burns says Medical Center, and Carrie Joe says Medical Center. So, okay, the Medical Center it is. I believe you guys, because I can't remember. So thank you, Internet Research Team, for helping to lift some of the fog from the mystery of what show was it that Chad Everett starred in. Man. And people who are watching this on YouTube when it's archived, feel free to make comments too and chime in. We're going to get all the information that everybody needs. I am so happy to see everybody tuned in right now. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. I love this stuff. This is what it's all about. Now, here's another sad case of a celebrity making an album. I'm kind of attached to this one. This is what happens, and it does happen occasionally. I've seen records by a guy named Bill Joy, the Singing Mayor. Yes, the Singing Mayor. Not mayor as in horse, but mayor as in municipal boss of a city. Mayors try to make records, and it's kind of sad. Sometimes you take a former record store owner, yep, record store owner, and he thinks he can make an album. Look at that. Malcolm Tent, former owner of Trash American Style in Danbury, Connecticut, was forced against his will to make an album to cash in on his fame. And it's a total hodgepodge of musical styles. You've got punk rock, you've got hardcore, you've got ambient instrumentals, you've got looped vocals, you've got straight ahead rock and roll, you've got acoustic punk rock, you've got stuff that sounds like The Residents. I mean, what was the guy thinking? I have no idea, but the record is here. It does exist. It's got 14. This guy was actually in 14 different bands. Can you imagine that? And according to the liner notes, stuck it out for at least 35 years. Ridiculous. You think a store owner would stick to doing what he's best at. But this guy kept cranking them out. And the results are here on an album. The Multiple Moods of Malcolm Tent. I've got a few copies of this. Actually, at last count, I had 411 of them. I've seen that a lot of them are on colored vinyl, which is pretty cool. The labels on some of them are upside down. Some of them are right side up. Some of them are at weird angles. It's a very interesting album, if nothing else. Whether the guy can sing or not, I don't know. I'm not going to be the judge of that. Whether he's any good at graphic design or not, I don't know. I kind of like the look of it. And it looks kind of like a Mondrian effect. I think it's kind of a decent album, really, considering what it is. I do have ample supplies of this album. I invite anybody out there to purchase one, or two, or three. This album can be found on Discogs and eBay. It can also, since I have so much overstock on this record, I have 419 copies of it. You can PayPal me directly, mt@malcolmtent.net. And it's just a coincidence that my PayPal address is the same name as the guy on this album. Just saying. Yeah, you can PayPal me, mt@malcolmtent.net. Send cold hard cash, $15 postpaid in the U.S., $15 postpaid in the U.S., P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. And you too can also own a piece of celebrity cash-in vinyl history. And if you don't like albums, we got CDs too. UK only tour CD. This guy apparently toured the UK and they did a CD to try to have a cheap, tawdry cash in on that event. These are also available. So yeah, there's the pitch. Celebrity gross out, courtesy of this guy right here. And Grant Den wants to know how much for a record player that will play it. They can be had cheaply enough, guy. You can just go to any big box retail store and buy yourself a record player, and you will have something on which to play the Multiple Moods of Malcolm Tent, and or a CD player in which to have the introduction to Malcolm Tent on CD. Personally, I love the album, however bad it might be. Grant Den, by the way, used to be in a band called Broken Talent. Is it coincidence or design that the very band that Grant Den used to be a member of is on this album? Do you believe in UFOs? How about Yetis? What about plasma spots? What about the coincidence of Grant Den being at one time a founding member of this band right here, Broken Talent? Weird. More reason to buy one. Grant Den says he won't leave the house. That's why you have mail order. Mail order! You have an entire internet at your disposal and it's full of record players. Click and ship, baby. Click and ship. And then you too can play a record. Maybe including this one right here. We're getting deep now, kids. Hello, Chloe. Classic trashy. Originally from Danbury, Connecticut. Chloe. Chloe is the one who, I don't think I'm revealing any deep secrets here, but Chloe used to go to, Chloe, did you actually go to NYU where you booked a certain fateful concert by one of my favorite artists? And it wasn't a concert, it was a poetry reading. Did you actually go to NYU in order to facilitate the poetry reading that I'm talking about? And if you did, do you mind me mentioning your name in connection with the poetry reading? Let me know. While you're cogitating and mulling that over, I'm going to tell you about another guy who could not sing worth a hoot, could not sing worth a good goddamn, could not sing his way out of the proverbial nylon stocking. This guy could not sing. But it didn't stop the powers that be from sticking him into the recording studio not one, not two, not three, but 4 times. 4 times this guy was put into, I think, Paramount Recording Studios in Hollywood, California to make an album. Why? Because he was in a hit TV series. That's it. That was his only criterion. The only criterion necessary to record an album, or 4, was because he was in a hit TV series. Kind of like old Chad Everett. Did it matter if he could sing? No. It did not matter if he could sing or not. Was it any kind of encumbrance that he flat out, plain old could not sing at all? Nope. Didn't matter. There's money to be made. And lots of it. Lots of it. To the tune of 4 albums worth. I read this guy's autobiography. He only mentions once, in the most rapid passing possible, in 1 sentence in the whole book, does he even briefly allude to the fact that he made an album. He made 4, and they're all just god-awful, and therefore just wonderful. I refer, of course, to Leonard Nimoy. Yes, Leonard Nimoy, a.k.a. Mr. Spock. Yes. And Leonard Nimoy's albums follow a definite trajectory, which is really interesting. Okay, they start out the first one with the most obvious, in-your-face, the boldest cash grab possible, the most blatant tie-in they could possibly make, which was, of course, Star Trek. You know, they couldn't use the name Star Trek because of, contractual reasons, but they could apparently use Mr. Spock. They could put a picture of the Enterprise on it. They could say it was from outer space. And they could rake in the money as much as they possibly could. Did I mention before the guy can't sing? He can't. Sounds like a wounded bull moose. It's got that sort of tonality to him where he kind of just groans through the songs. He just groans through all of them. All of them. This album's great. Of course, it's got the theme from Star Trek on it. Where is love? Visit to a sad planet. Harkens back to the good old days when all we had to worry about was nuclear annihilation and not some fucking virus. The good old days. Yeah. Song about nuclear annihilation. Twinkle, twinkle, little Earth. Music to watch space girls by. All kinds of good cash-in stuff on this album. And in truth, if you look at this first album, he doesn't really do a whole lot of singing on this one. He does try to bellow his way through Where Is Love, and it's pretty bad. It's a lot of recitations, and it's a definite cash-in on Star Trek. So I guess they sold enough to where they figured, well, the field has been plowed, let's just cast seeds. Let's do another one. This time we'll address the fact that maybe there is a guy named Leonard Nimoy, and he's not just Mr. Spock. We're going to show that there are not one, but you guessed it, two sides to Leonard Nimoy. There's one, there's two. Both of them. Right there. You got them both. Now's when old Leonard Nimoy gets the pipes out and starts to sing. Oh my God. Ooh, boy. Once I smiled by myself. The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. A lot of people have been mentioning that one. It's on this album right here. The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. Oh man, Cotton Candy, Gentle on My Mind. You have heard nothing until you've heard this guy try to sing Gentle on My Mind. If I Were a Carpenter, Love of the Common People. This is late 60s pop culture at its zenith. Doesn't matter how bad it is, you've got every thread of pop culture here on one album. A TV star, slick arrangements, a label owned by a Hollywood movie studio. It's beautiful. Cash, 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 and cash in, baby. And as we know, since the cash in is the primary motivator here, in fact, the only motivator here, it stands to reason that enough people bought Leonard Nimoy records to where they kept cranking them out. This is the classic one, Leonard Nimoy, The Way I Feel. Look at all the ways he feels. Got a lot of feeling there. Lots and lots of feeling. Feeling everywhere. A veritable montage of feeling. A collage of feeling. A collision of feeling. And my personal favorite, the touch. The touch of Leonard Nimoy. This dude wants to reach out and touch you. It's kind of like old Chad Everett there, lurking in the woods, but this guy is a little more benign appearing than old Chad was. This guy's not strung out. That's Leonard Nimoy. He's got the touch. And this song is riddled with classics. Nature Boy, Cycles, Made in Wine. Man, this is easier than listening. Easier than listening. Kind of a similar deal with this guy right here. I cannot believe how many albums there are by Telly Savalas. Look at all this. Telly Savalas records. I only have 4. I'm pretty sure there's at least one more, maybe 2. Same deal, man. Just absolutely dreadful what happens when he stands in front of a microphone. It's so bad. But it's so much fun. God damn, these are great party records. All of these Telly Savalas records. Leonard Nimoy records. I'm not kidding, guys. If you want to get your party going, play these. You know, and is that not the function of a record? To entertain? You know, to entertain. If you look at it that way, these records are absolutely successful. They're entertaining as hell. They're fun. I used to watch Kojak all the time. I never bought one of his records, but they're great. Man, Telly Savalas doing these kind of menacing, like singing, speaking versions of yesterday when I was young, and we both knew it was over, and you lost that love and feeling. Man, he keeps trying to hit that note in that song, and he just can't do it. Why do they give Righteous Brothers songs to guys who can't sing? It's not nice. Maybe Telly thought he had to prove something. I mean, the guy looks pretty self-confident. I think he was pretty satisfied with his ability to sing. Look at that. That's a guy who's got no doubts whatsoever. He knows he can do it. To the tune of at least 4 albums. Have never, ever heard a voice like the one that Telly Savalas has. Truly unbelievable. Truly wonderful. This one is a favorite of a lot of people. A lot of great disco track on this one. Who Loves You Baby, the title track. Disco. Disco does not suck. So Telly Savalas, and if anybody knows the name or what the cover looks like to the 5th Telly Savalas record, besides these, please feel free to post and comment, because I would love to know what the missing Telly Savalas record is, because I want it. I want to complete my collection. I honestly want to have every Telly Savalas record there is, because I love these. We saw the 2 sides of Leonard Nimoy earlier. There's the 2 sides of Telly. There's one, and there's the other. You got them both. You got heads, you got tails. Fantastic. And I got one more for you. I mean, I could talk about Burt Reynolds, but he's kind of been benignly gazing over our shoulder the entire broadcast, so I don't have to go into Burt Reynolds. Burt, same deal. He's got the same vocal range as Telly Savalas, the same vocal range as Chad Everett, and about the same vocal range as Leonard Nimoy. It didn't stop him. He did an album anyway. I think the one thing I'm going to say about this record is I'm going to guess that Burt must have had a place in Connecticut. And I'm going to guess that somewhere out in the back 40 he had a warehouse full of these things. Because to this day, I mean, every now and again I'll go to a record swap meet and some guy will have a box of these things. All sealed, all shrink wrapped, all complete with the record and the poster that goes with it for, you know, like $1. And they just keep popping up. Like, literally, dozens of them. Dozens of them. My guess is that old Burt has to have a tax write-off every year, so he gives them to the Goodwill or whatever. And they end up at the record swaps for $1 each. This is quite a listening experience for $1. You will get your dollar's worth from this Burt Reynolds album. Promise. Malcolm Tent guarantee. Alright, now I got one more. One more. Observant viewers will have seen this guy's 8x10 photo in the frame for this entire broadcast. But now you're going to see the album. And I've seen this guy, seen a lot of posts about this guy lately. Have not been paying a lot of attention. I guess it was his birthday recently. Don't know how old he would have been. But this guy was an honest-to-God hero to many of us males coming of age in the mid-70s. Probably a few females as well. The one true great American hero. The one death-defying, iron gut, fearless mofo. The one true man in the United States of America in the mid-70s. I'm not talking about myself. I was young at the time. All the members of the almighty anti-scene. We were too young at the time, but we all worshipped at the altar of this guy right here. This guy could do a lot of things, and he could make a lot of money. So they figured, why not have him make a lot of money by cutting an album? Yes, Warren guessed it. Evel Knievel. And here it is, one of my favorite albums. An absolute gem in the crown of my collection. the album by Evel Knievel. Man, fantastic. I have to clarify one thing. Evel does not sing on this album. I think Evel was man enough to say no. When they said, come on, Evel, just sing one. He said, no way. He was at least aware of his limitations and would not sing in front of a microphone. But he does read poetry. He does have a poem on this album called Why. And it asks the eternal question, why? Evel Knievel, why do you do it? Why you gotta be so nutty on that motorcycle of yours? He attempts to answer the question with his poem, Why? And that's worth listening to because it's very deep, very dramatic, very touching, gets to the soul of the man, you know. That guy right there gets to his soul in this poem called Why? And there's a song called The Ballad of Evel Knievel, sort of like a theme song for his Snake River Canyon jump, and lots of, you know, narrative and a press conference, and Evel talks to the kids. Yeah, man. This is a really good record. A period piece with lots of very entertaining, safe, middle-of-the-road music, a poem, and a strong positive message for the kids. Which some could argue would be, don't do this. Don't do it at home. Don't do it over a bus. Don't do it over 14 buses. Don't do it over a canyon. Just don't do it. Just don't. Don't beat journalists with your cane. Don't do it. Don't record albums like this. Don't do it. Don't make TV movies called Viva Knievel because they will last forever and people will see them forever. Don't do it. I think that's the enduring message in the poem Why by Evel Knievel. The answer is not why not, it's just why? Why? And I think that's the question that I'm going to leave you guys with on this broadcast. Why? Why would anybody want to peddle a comic book about himself? Why? Why? Why would somebody go to the trouble to go to England and Belgium and Wales and France and play music and have a CD to sell on the tour and then try to sell them to people here in the US of A? Why? Why? Why would we do this? Why would we go ahead and go through the trouble of pressing 500 copies of an album and try to sell them to people? Why? Why? I know the answer to that question. But like Evel Knievel, I'm not saying. Maybe next time. Maybe on the next episode of Malcolm Tent Talks Tunes. Maybe. 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 In any case, I'm out of here now. Thank everybody, as usual, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you'll continue to check me out on Facebook. Check out my YouTube channel. Makes me very happy when you do that, and I am very happy that anybody out there finds this to be entertaining. That means I have done my job, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why. I do hope to be back live on Facebook in about 167 hours. Until we meet again, keep your head up, keep your heels down, and stay sane, mothers. This is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.